One, two, three.
Greetings and peace, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me this evening. I would like to begin with the Nur Fatimiyya Sufi greeting of Nur Alaikum, upon you be light. Tonight, I have the honor and privilege and pleasure of being joined by my brother, friend, Murshid, and Sheikh, our beloved Shaykh Wahid Azal, in part 33 in the series of dialogues and conversations that we have the honor of doing. And in tonight's part 33, the Sheikh will discuss this white racist undercurrent in Canada's cannabis culture and just this dismissiveness of they have of people of the East and knowledge of the East. And as the Sheikh says, be careful of the white guys wearing a Bob Marley shirt. Without further ado, welcome, Noor alaikum, Khush Ahmadaid, Bismillah to our dear Sheikh.
أعوذ بالله العلي العظيم من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم وعليكم نور, everybody. There's something wrong with my camera. I'm getting it fixed at the moment. So for the purposes of this podcast, I'm just going to speak rather than have the camera on. Where do I begin? Okay, let me start from this context. Basically, even though Mr. Bennett has made this a conflict of personalities, fundamentally, this is a conflict about historical truth and the integrity of religious scholarship, and especially who is attempting to control a narrative about it. Now, what I'm addressing here is the reemergence. I mean, where this all began is about the reemergence of an old 19th century Orientalist trope, the so-called drug-crazed Eastern prophet, which was recycled in 2025 back in August by two entirely separate outlets. Okay, and then again in November. So Rosita Shortia's 5-part series that included B. Schofield and myself as the critics of the Ahmadi religion of LARPing and plagiarism, then finds a new voice in Mr. Chris Bennett's recent screeds in cannabis culture. Now, Bitter Winter is the publishing arm of Sesnur that we talked about before, that I wrote about in 3 monographs earlier in the year, the last one being The Goal of the Wisecrack. And cannabis culture purports to be an independent cannabis culture website tied to a business and a whole subculture of potheads in Canada. Now, whereas Mr. Chris Bennett, triggered this, fired the first shot with just complete nonsense, my responses to him have always been grounded in actual text, proper historiography, and real scholarship. But I find it quite noteworthy that some of the same Bitterwinter articles using the quote-unquote drug crazed and hallucinating prophet rhetoric disappeared shortly after Bennett's articles were published on his website. So I don't need to speculate. I simply observed that the same smear appeared in 2 different outlets, and one of those outlets quietly removed its material right after the other published a nearly identical attack. On top of this, Mr. Chris Bennett has basically taken the 2016 doxes by Dugan's operatives in that Fourth Revolutionary blog and repurposed the entire blog as an attack on me. Now, why this is significant? This is significant because Mr. Bennett claims to be Antifa, but as I have shown over the last couple of days in blog posts, the rhetorical style of Mr. Bennett is not Antifa. He's not a leftist by any stretch of the imagination, because his rhetorical style, his argumentation is racist to the core. Now, the origin of the controversy began when Mr. Bennett attempted to portray the Bob as a drug-influenced mystic, a claim with zero grounding in the primary sources and no support in any credible scholarship. The Bob's writings, especially the Persian and Arabic bayan, explicitly forbid narcotics, such as hashish, that Mr. Bennett is arguing for. The Bobby metaphysics of the Bob are structured, rigorous, and entirely incompatible with the kind of argument that Mr. Bennett is presenting. But the idea of a drug-fueled revelation is not new. It is a centuries-old colonial trope used against the Ismailis Qalandar Sufis and Sufis in general, and later the Babis. So it comes from Crusader legends, fundamentalist Sunni narratives, missionary tracts, Qajar propaganda, and Pahlavi era forgeries. What we're seeing now is its reappearance in modern times, in modern online polemics. So that means that my detractors, whether they be Cessnoor or Mr. Chris Bennett, are repurposing the old discredited tropes of anti-Bobby propaganda that began with fundamentalist Shiite mullahs and state actors such as the Qajars, and trying to now weaponize those same arguments against me. In August, now let's go back. In August 2025, Bitter Winter, a magazine that is associated explicitly with Cessnoor and Cessnoor adjacent narratives, published the five-part series by Rosita Shortier. In our dealings, in our scholarly and journalistic dealings with the Ahmadi religion of light and peace. The fourth and fifth installments targeted me personally, describing my work as hallucinations and framing me as a kind of prophet whose insights come from hallucinogenic plants. That kind of pathologizing language is directly in line with what anthropologists call the colonial pharmacology trope. And Mr. Bennett has explicitly repurposed these points in his screeds against me. This is the critical nexus. 3 months later, after the Bitter Winter diatribes, Bennett published 2 articles, and he claims he's doing a third one now, using the same vocabulary: madman, drug crazed, psychedelic revelations, hallucinatory claims, different outlet, different continent, exact same template. I'm simply pointing out that both reproduce the identically same defamatory trope, using nearly identical wording. Legally and academically, that establishes a pattern, a nexus of repeated defamatory imputation. But this is the nexus is undeniable. These people publish a 5-part series, 2 parts of it, or 3 parts of it, which are devoted to me. And then Mr. Bennett repurposes much of that argumentation, plus the Duganist docs from 2016, and positions himself as some kind of an exposer of me. Now, why does this matter? Once a harmful false trope enters circulations, its repetition across outlets deepens reputational harm. When 2 unrelated writers independently recycle the same discredited stereotype that I am a drug-addled visionary or a madman, the damage multiplies. And more important than personal harm, this caricature distorts the public understanding of an entire religious tradition. Now, as you know very well, and everybody knows, the Bab is the hill that I'm willing to die on. Okay? My first response to Bennett, where I responded to his accusations about Babism being a hashish-induced creed in the 19th century Iran, my first response walked through the historical record. The so-called Dulguruki myth I have proven a forgery, right? I even cited a recent journal article that establishes the fact. I showed that it is missionary propaganda and not history. I showed right out of the text of the Persian Bayan itself where the Bab condemned intoxicants like hashish. And I also pointed out the fact that Qajar Iran had widespread opium use across all classes. My goal was to correct the record with scholarship, not escalate the conflict. But Mr. Bennett's ego apparently was hurt or whatever, and he immediately escalated. Now, LUIGIi CORVAGLIA, over several different articles and trilogies, especially one particular one, the Cult Apologist Mafia, as well as other critics, have cataloged a very particular polemical method used in certain pro-new religion NRM cult writing, which Cessnoor exemplifies. They always pathologize the target. They always suggest delusion or drug use. They consistently rely on discredited sources. and recast metaphysical claims as psychological deviance, Bennett's piece followed this method almost point for point verbatim. So what I'm pointing out, that both reproduce the same Orientalist smear, one that has a long and well-documented history. Now, to bring the matter back to the Bob's writings are some of the most linguistically structured and metaphysical intricate works of the 19th century. They are the opposite of intoxicated hallucination. They are the product of a disciplined revelation, Quranic hermeneutics, and a Neoplatonic philosophy of illumination. But here's the thing, even though this is what these people are doing, they're trying to demonize me. My goal is not actually to demonize Mr. Bennett. My aim is clarity. When misinformation and misinformation agents circulate, especially misinformation rooted in colonial fantasies and state and clerically manufactured narratives, someone has to correct the record. And where the Bob is concerned, that is my job. I stand for the truth of this matter, for intellectual integrity, and for the dignity of sacred history. This also goes for the fact that Mr. Bennett deliberately attempted to misrepresent the 2014 fatwa of Ayatollah Muhammad Sadiq Rouhani. Now, in the 2014 interview that Benton Rooks did with me, I was very meticulous to mention the fact that I was in the background of this process, that were two individuals, primarily the Lebanese scholar Nabil Hamid, who was the point man responsible for the direct communication with Rouhani's office. Mr. Bennett tried to recast this entire fatwa as my own personal fabrication. I point by point showed that this is not the case. He explicitly mischaracterized the Arabic wording of the fatwa, and I set him straight in one particular post, right? Now, why is this important? This is important because in 2014, just right after I came back from the First World Ayahuasca Conference in Ibiza, because of an article I published criticizing the final night of that conference, immediately online and in various discussion boards, there was an attack on the veracity of this fatwa. This talking point was then later taken on by the extremely dubious writer Michael Muhammad Knight, and then basically propagated through that portal. And then there was this journalist that contacted me around 2015 who wanted me to prove the authenticity of the fatwa. I did so. I even gave him the email to the office of Ayatollah Rouhani, and either he never followed up with it or I don't know. But the problem seems to be, and this is part of the conflation tactic that Mr. Bennett has used, Mr. Bennett seems to have confused Ayatollah Muhammad Sadiq Rouhani with the former president, Hassan Rouhani, right? This was also the point that those detractors back in 2015 were likewise pursuing, mistaking the dissident Ayatollah in Qom for the president of Iran, right? These are two different people. Ayatollah Rouhani was the senior Ayatollah. He was a marja, a source of emulation, whereas Hassan Rouhani was a mid-tier cleric, a politician, and the president of Iran at the time. These are two separate people, but there has been a conflation. There appears to have been a conflation, a deliberate conflation narrative presented about this fatwa. The fatwa is real. It bears the seal of the office of Ayatollah Rouhani himself, the late Ayatollah Rouhani now. And it argues very explicitly that it is a permissive fatwa. That means that it is not a ruling in the sense that it is prohibiting something, but it is a ruling in the sense that it shows that there is no possibility of ruling against it unless certain criteria are met. Mr. Bennett completely mischaracterized all of this, A, because he doesn't know Arabic, and B, because he didn't understand anything about the translation that I put out there. And I've done several different translations of the same Arabic text. Then he took one of my statements in both the Reality Sandwich interview of 2014 and subsequently at the conference in Ibiza and completely mischaracterized it. I very explicitly stated that during the conversations with Nabil Hamid, that Ayatollah Rouhani very explicitly says that the administering of these such substances should only be in the hands of qualified experts. Ahl al-Ikhtisas. This was not in the text of the fatwa. This was part of the discussions that was ongoing over an 18-month period between Nabil Ahmed and Ayatollah Rouhani's office, right? So these are the issues that we're dealing with. Now, what is very bizarre is the fact that all of this came almost immediately after I went and blocked a whole litany of pro-Zionist voices on my Facebook. People that were just like either trying to fence it on a whole lot of issues about the genocide in Gaza, or were outright pro-Zionist. So I went through that list and I blocked over like about 30, 40, nearly 50 people out of my Facebook list. And I'm still going through it because I don't want to interact with these people, right? As simple as that. I don't want any communication, interaction with these people. I don't even have to make an accusation about whether they have any kind of, professional nexus to any intelligence agency. But the fact of the matter is that, something that matters to me more than anything is moral clarity. And there is no way that you can recast as what has happened in Gaza over the last 2 years as anything but genocide. And you cannot spin whatever the Israeli government has done as anything but fascism, pure and simple. So anyone who is morally unclear about the situation, I don't want to have anything to do with. That's my prerogative. But the minute I blocked all of these people, Mr. Bennett's attack comes, and then all of a sudden, several of these links on the Bitter Winter site have gone missing, which is very fishy, but it is something that needs to be looked at by authorities. Now, I have to be very careful about what I say because there are certain official processes now in place where all of these issues, particularly with Mr. Bennett and his purported cohorts, is going to be addressed very meticulously. So I hand it over to you, whatever you want to ask me or whatever you want to say, Salman.
Yes, Sheikh, this is very important, and this subject has to be discussed because even in the Masonic world and in other places where I was involved in, I always saw like this dismissiveness of the East and the Eastern culture and Eastern teachings by these white Masons, who, in my eyes, are just smug gatekeepers. And I see this Bennett character like being one of them, right?
Yeah,
Where anything related to the East is looked down upon, dismissed. They call it fringe masonry,
yeah.
even though those societies and Neoplatonism and the fraternities and religion, it all comes from the aspects of the Persian mystics, the
Sure.
Magi, the
But
Persian
let
Empire.
me point something out to you that I think this is very important for you to take on board because I've noticed some of your podcasts about Neoplatonism. All the early figures of Neoplatonism, of the school of Neoplatonism, all Eastern. Plotinus
Yes.
himself, his teacher Ammonius Saccas, Porphyry, who was a Phoenician, and Iamblichus, who was a Chaldean, right? So Neoplatonism itself is an Eastern school. It is not a European school. Granted, it was born in the Roman Empire and that these people were Roman citizens, but Plotinus was Egyptian, his teacher was Egyptian, Porphyry was a Phoenician, and Iamblichus was a Chaldean, Sumero-Babylonian. So Neoplatonism itself is a school of the East, right? And Plotinus, as far as we know, had an interest from what he knew at the time about the schools of India, right? The information obviously at that time was very limited to the people in Europe and in North Africa, but it is an Eastern school. And once we get into Iamblichus's Neoplatonism is explicitly has elements that are completely Oriental. They are not in any way, shape, or form European. They're not Greek in any substantial way. This is known. This has been commented on, despite all the attempts, even to recast figures like Iamblichus as Hellenic, because they were writing in Greek. That doesn't change the fact that the philosophy, the point of origin, is completely Oriental. In fact, Iamblichus is a very interesting figure in that there is a very eerie semblance in the way that Iamblichus rolls and the way that Sohrawardi rolls. He was a Chaldean Roman citizen writing in Greek and Latin. Sohrawardi was an Iranian, a Persian, trying to revive what he claimed was the ancient Zoroastrian wisdom, writing in Arabic, writing prayers in Arabic where he's invoking Avestan and Zoroastrian names of God. So this is the very interesting element and of comparison between Iamblichus. So even Neoplatonism, even what these people don't realize when they try to reduce, the wisdom of the East, and especially during the Islamic period, to Neoplatonism, this is not a slur or a smear, right? Because Neoplatonism itself has an actual Eastern origin. The figures associated, the founding figures, Ammonius Saccas, Plotinus, Porphyry, Iamblichus, and then later Proclus is probably the exception, but he's the last generation of these people. But the founding generation of Neoplatonism are all Eastern and African figures, Afro-Asiatics. So Neoplatonism is fundamentally an Afro-Asiatic philosophy. We don't have to apologize for this. The reductionism has a rebound effect by people who do it. So that's for that. But what you said right at the beginning is correct. It is correct by virtue of the fact that what I have noticed about this Bennett, number one, the man is envious. The man has an ego on him the size of Mount Everest. I set the record straight based on the fact that he was propagating literal discredited smears about the origin of Babism. And then there's a parallel thing going on. The accusations that he is repurposing about the Bab are then the same accusation that he's then repurposing in his attack on me. So what does this tell us? This tells us that whoever or whatever inspired Mr. Bennett, right, has a bee in their bonnet about Babism. Just let's kind of walk back events during this year. That dubious woman, Rania, came here explicitly demanding that I abandon Babism, right? Several points during the year, there have been online attacks against me over Babism, over the Bab. And now this. The Cessna people and the Bitter Winter people did exactly the same thing. And now Mr. Bennett. So the issue of whoever is inspiring Mr. Bennett is not even me. It is about the heritage of the Bayan. It is about the Bab. It is about Supa Azal. And what is noteworthy is that unlike that docs from 2016, Mr. Bennett spends an awful lot of time in that screed of his attacking me, basically using the template of Baha'i arguments against the Bayan and Supa Azal. So he's, even though he even cites two of my articles at one point, he is deliberately broadcasting Baha'i propaganda and talking points about the Bayan. This is very interesting. And this is something that I've brought up to several people, and it will be definitely an angle that the authorities themselves will eventually come to and see, because it is very fishy that the same line of attack is being pursued. So their line of attack is that if they discredit me, they discredit the Bayan itself and validate the Baha'i narrative about the Bayan. This is what the problem is. This is where this is all originating, and who benefits from this, right? We know the cast of characters. I don't even have to name these people. I've already named some of them in this discussion, but these are the people who benefit from, basically trying to discredit the Bab. But the fact of the matter is, as I said, I'm not backing down, and this is the hill that I'm willing to die on. As simple as that.
And that's the interesting thing, because Shaykh Wahid Azal is the living mirror of the Bayan, and it is he whom God shall make manifest. And I think what we're dealing with here is like a spider's web of these different characters and
Exactly.
conspiracies,
Yeah.
whether it's Dessner, the Baha'is, this Ronya character, Bennett, like these Masonic gatekeepers, like all of it combined, it's like a vast conspiracy to target the Sheikh. And I encourage everyone, just when you see this stuff, just please have discernment, especially with these people who are taking our Eastern mysticism and our figures and just kind of removing our presence from it, right? It's like someone that I had spoken to, right, in New York, and they said they went to a Jarahi Sufi meeting and it was totally whitewashed, right? Same
Mm,
with many other Sufi communities in America where they want to take the Eastern wisdom and mysticism, but they want to remove people like myself and Sheikh Wahid Azal from it. And that's what is being addressed here is this culture where everything is being culturally appropriated,
yeah,
where
this is what it's
even
about.
even Rumi's works, right? Like
Yeah,
the person that belonged to the Sufi order here in Philadelphia, he
exactly.
completely removed all mentions of Islam
Yeah,
and Allah from Rumi's poetry,
this is
and that
this
person
is
claims to be a
this is
Sufi.
the bottom line. Look, let me just answer some of what you said in the order that you said them. Number one, whether there is a conspiracy or not, this is something for another venue to determine concretely in its legal terms, right? So let's leave that there. Um, but your second point is fundamentally correct, and that is that what I represent is a threat to not only the usual cast of characters, but also it is a threat because I am demanding authenticity, right? And authenticity to capitalism and its forces that are appropriating our figures, our sages, right, for profit, is something that they cannot stomach. Why? Because authenticity immediately takes away these figures from their hands. They can't profit from it, right? So, Mr. Bennett, I mean, he doesn't even realize that what he has done, he has actually made common cause with the mullahs, the fundamentalist, fanatical mullahs of Iran during the time of the Bab, against the Bab and myself. He is using their exact template of, of narrative. And this is a point that needs to be highlighted about what's going on, which says that there's a constellation of actors here and that I represent a threat to a whole bunch of these cast of characters that are even very, unlikely political, allies. And this is bizarre because here's a point I should underscore. When Mr. Bennett published his article, several Baha'is that I still talk to privately, I sent the article, do that. And they had a cow privately, but I said, this also affects you. If you are a Baha'i claiming to be, claiming that the Bab is a manifestation of God in your own creed, then it behooves you to respond to this because this is basically reviving the old canards of the mullahs, right? And the Iranian conspiracy theorists, state conspiracy theorists against the Babis. They don't want to have anything to do with it. I even wrote to the moderator of the R Baha'i subreddit, and what did he do? Instead of responding to the substance of my wanting him to even look at this stuff, they blocked me from R Baha'i. So, which tells you that at the end of the day, these constellation of actors are not interested in the truth of it, of the issue. Even the Baha'is themselves are willing to sacrifice the Bab, as they have, over the last 100 something years. So, fine, if I am the sole voice on this planet that is going to stand for the primal point, I have said it again and again. I will say it now. I am willing to die on this hill. Okay, this is the Bab is my red line. You attack, you repurpose old arguments, discredited nonsense. I will come after you, but I will come after you in the way that I've shown that I will do it. I will meticulously, point by point, methodologically break you down. Right. So then, what are you left with when I expose you as being a know nothing intellectual lightweight, as I did with Mr. Chris Bennett? What does he do? He escalates to personal attack. That is a clear and unequivocal admission on his part that he lost the argument with me, right? But in his diatribe and in his screeds that he published against me, I am going to defend myself. I'm not just going to sit there and take bullshit from this stonehead. I am going to break what he does, even his attacks on me, and what we have uncovered through the tone, the rhetoric, the arguments that Mr. Bennett is using is that this gentleman is a white nationalist, pretending and playing at being something that he isn't. He is not Antifa. He's not a leftist. He is straight-laced, libertarian, white nationalist, and all there is to it. He can wear an Antifa shirt and take pictures of himself as much as he wants. At the end of the day, the attacks that he launched against me clearly and unequivocally prove him to be a racist. And he cannot walk it back anymore. So he didn't pull me into a trap. He walked into a trap of his own making, right? But I will defend myself, I will defend my family, and I will defend the tradition that I represent. And if he has a problem with it, and if all of his white middle class drug dealer friends have a problem with it, so be it. As I said, this is a hill I am willing to die on. What hill are these people prepared to die on? Nothing. Self-interest. That's the only hill that these people will die on. And they're too cowardly to even die on that hill, in my opinion.
You're right, Sheikh, and it's like even with my experience, in the Masonic world as well, where all these gatekeepers, they're only giving credit to the Greek and the Romans and the
Yeah.
French, right? Even in terms of the Scottish rite. But if we explore all of that, right, we see that it's Eastern origins, all of it to a 100% extent. They even tell you in Masonry, you must look to the East or travel to the East. So even in my instances, or even the work that I have done, other people have done like me, they're always attacked as like fringe masonry,
Well,
right?
look,
Like that
remember,
system didn't exist before
well,
1717.
look at this. Remember when I told you to read Martin Bernal's book, The Black Athena?
Yes.
Yeah, and you reviewed them, right? 3 volumes,
Hmm.
dense historiographical work. I remember because I was around and I was in graduate school at the time when those books came out. The attacks that were launched at Bernal, and Bernal is a white man, he's not even black himself or Afro-Asiatic. But what he showed in those 3 studies is unassailable. And I revisited those books last year, and then I went back and read the reviews that were scathing, and just you see very clearly now that much of what Bernal said was correct, right?
Yes.
That these white ivory tower academics that attacked the mainly classicists too were deliberately pushing an agenda against this guy because he had dared to cross that red line. But those 3 studies, in my opinion, still to this day stand on their own. The service that Martin Bernal did to scholarship is something that cannot um, we cannot. The gratitude is immense what he did because he showed us the way. He showed us where Western scholarship has consistently lied and where the mechanisms of white supremacy exist in Western historiography itself, right? So no matter how much they attacked him and discredited, and they destroyed this man's career, right? But what he said and what he put forth, and the arguments and the evidence, especially that he put in front of us and analyzed, that is something that they cannot touch as much as they try to smoke screen every issue. And this is extremely important. So, as with Martin Bernard, today these same cast of characters are doing the same thing with me. And they will cross any line because they think that by pulling rank with white supremacy, that shields and protects them from any kind of institutional backlash. They're wrong about that. Now, I'm not saying that these institutions of the West are foolproof in terms of going after people who are thinking that they are doing that, and that's going to protect them. But what this shows to us is that this is the thinking of these sorts of people, especially like Chris Bennett. They think that when they get recourse to white supremacy, no matter what they're trying to represent themselves as, this shields them. It doesn't shield them, right? And what it also does is allows me to expose them to prove the overall argument that I have been presenting to many people over the last couple of years. And this is a classic case of that very phenomenon.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And I think it's up to us, all of us, to have discernment, especially when it comes to Eastern wisdom and how it's being appropriated, whether it's the Sufi path, Zoroastrianism, anything of the East as a whole, Islam, which is culturally appropriated in the West. Do you see and notice, okay, what elements are they removing from Islam or the Sufi teachings? And we must have discernment to make sure that our ideas and our culture and the wisdom is protected and not like basically watered down and controlled, for their own agenda and manipulation, which goes to my next question, Sheikh, is that how do you guide all of us as followers and friends and brothers and sisters of the FSO and just in general as seekers of light to be able to discern through this and how to identify this stuff in the West?
Anything that you see online, take with a grain of salt and scrutinize every which way. Never take anything for granted. Nothing. Take nothing for granted, right? Do your own research, form your own independent opinion. Do not rely on emotive, triggers or anything like that. This is also part of the arsenal of a mature Salik. A wayfarer that has matured can see and spot deception for truth at an instant. They know it, right? And I've said this to many people. I don't want to baby people through these sorts of things, right? And that is the reason why I don't accept just anyone as a member of the FSO. I am expecting a level of intellectual and spiritual maturity to already be in place for people, right? We don't want children. We're not trying to take people by the hand to teach them the ABCs. They are required to learn the ABCs for them. When you come into this, there are bigger expectations in place. And these bigger expectations imply that you've already mastered these earlier ones before coming in, right? Because a path like this, as I have been saying this in my own experience in these classes recently, a path like this is not easy. It is a path for mature people. You are going to be confronted. People are going to come after you. People are going to hate you. All of these things are happening. If you don't have the inner fortitude, if you don't have moral clarity, don't come. As simple as that. Do not come if you lack that clarity. Because this is what it is about. I am talking about the philosophy of illumination. What is illumination? It is clarity, right? It's not obscurity. It's not moral inversion. It's not ethical reversal, right? And I am not, this is not a shop front that I'm putting in front of people coming buy my product. This is precisely the reason why I resisted putting up a Fatimiyya website, because I don't want to play by the rules of the system. And this is one of the reasons why then I am attacked, because I am not creating a shopping front with a brand. I am inviting people, mature people, together people to a path of wayfaring to God. I am not inviting people to lock themselves into a brand or a cultic network, right? And this is what drives an organization such as Sestner up the wall, because their entire existence and raison d'etre is based on representing people like me. So their clientele that constitutes some of the most dubious new religious movements out there, and possibly also this whatever outfit Mr. Chris Bennett is associated with, they represent clients like that, whether it be the Ahmadi Religion of Light and Peace, Shinrikyo, various psychedelic churches. Now Mr. Bennett himself with his, he wants to create a cannabis religion with himself as his prophet. I don't play by that rule. I don't want the representation of these Western cult lobbies. This is how ridiculous this is, that in the last decades of the 20th century, because of the mushrooming of these sorts of groups and organizations, cults or new religious movements, that there arose a necessity, and certain people saw this as a lucrative way of making money, of initiating an actual lobby organization to represent these people, right? With individuals that have connections to government, to defense establishment, contractors, or similar, all of that stuff. This is who the Sesnur body is. Rosita Shortia herself was at one point, a member of the EU Parliament, right? So this is how ridiculous this situation is, that they see me as such a threat simply because I am not playing by the rules. I don't want to go under their umbrella. I don't want a place at their table. I am talking about independence. We are walking to God. We're not trying to offer a brand, make a lucrative business out of, this stuff. because this is far more, because this sort of thing, the path that I am walking with all of its trials and travails is far harder than anything that exists. And because of it, it's hard, it's true. And it is not about me. I have been saying this consistently over and over again. Number one, it's about protecting and reviving the legacy of the Bab. And number two is about ensuring a legacy for a future generation after myself. Because I am fallible and I am mortal. I will die. Right? And what has happened to the legacy of the Bayan at the hands of the Baha'is and these colonial imperialist interests that looked at the Bayan as a threat to their interests, by any way that I can do during my lifetime, I will try to reverse that. And I have been successful to some degree. Otherwise, these attacks wouldn't happen. If I was a nobody, right? If my influence was not as far-reaching as Mr. Bennett had claimed in one interaction with me, then why spend all this time and all this ink and all this bandwidth attacking me? Why? Right? So if he wants to call me a madman, maybe perhaps he should go in the mirror and look at himself, that he is expending all this time and energy on an issue where he claims to me to be insignificant, yet he's spending all this time doing it. That's a perfect definition from as a counselor. I will, if some client came to me and said that to me, I would immediately advise them to take several steps back and that there's a serious mental health issue at work here. And this is what he's telegraphing. Never mind the racism and the white supremacy, all the other trash.
Yeah, definitely, Sheikh. I mean, I think I think this character is just projecting by the aspect of mental illness and talking down on others. They're projecting their own insecurity with the aspect of creating a cannabis religion.
Yeah.
And I've been with Shaykh Wahid Azal in the Noor FSO for 5 years now, and it's been a very powerful journey, and it's only for those who are willing to go the extra mile, and it brought a lot of growth and peace into my life, and the spiritual attacks and, let's say, the spiritual struggles are there as well, but it's only meant to make you into the wayfaring salik and the aspect of the fana and baka, and Sheikh Wahid Azal is the real deal, and that's why these people have day one have been relentless in their spiritual assaults against him. And I've seen this, whether it was the Baha'is, the Duganists, now this crowd sending supposed lovers into his life. I mean, it's been totally nonstop, even in the 5 years that I have witnessed, and how even they try to like bring that up upon me as well. But see, that's what the Sheikh is saying, that it's the Noor FSO. If you're up for it, it's only for you. If you're just expecting something else, then it's not for you. And that's the beauty of this whole thing, which goes to my next question for the Sheikh is, how can we as a collective, people that love you dearly and are always with you every step of the way, how can we fight back against all of this stuff happening currently, including all this white appropriation of Eastern mysticism, whether it's through this guy with the cannabis stuff, Masonry, and the other occult groups and fraternities which kind of take Eastern knowledge and mask it as their own?
Do what we're doing here, expose it, push back against it, be relentless. This is what I'm saying, that, I am not here, this is not a happy clappy club here. Okay. We do real work. And that means that if there is untruth, falsity, and straight up bullshit out there where we're concerned, we will push back. None of us have ventured into any kind of criminal activity. This is the really interesting thing. The same talking points of trying to pathologize me as a criminal, which I completely, dissected in the goal of the wisecrack and brought in Foucault to contextualize it. The same pattern of trying to criminally pathologize me is the same one echoed verbatim by Mr. Chris Bennett. I mean, besides revealing his racism, which is because that is a common, well-known tactic of racist discourse, is to criminally pathologize the other, especially if they're Eastern Muslim and that sort of, and they're male. They always do it. This is the running systemic bias in the minds of these motherfuckers. They do it to black people. They do it to, and since 9/11, they have done it consistently without any nuance to people from our part of the world, right? And this is where they revealed their head. So in the long term, Mr. Bennett thinks that he has exposed me. As I said in that last blog, the Reefer Reich, which I think we should link in the description box for this video, people should read. He has revealed not only himself, but his entire community as being a bunch of covert Nazis. That's what they are. And that cannabis culture website has revealed itself to be nothing more than a cheap rack that is repurposing a sort of Der Strömer type rhetoric. This Der Strömer was the Nazi, rag that was, pushing all kinds of unbelievable anti-Semitic bile under Julius Streicher, was condemned as a war criminal in Nuremberg and hanged. But this is what he's doing. That those two articles and whatever third one he's writing is basically a Der Stürmer in a cannabis, psychedelic community context. And these people have finally, unequivocally, without any pulling any punch, have finally revealed themselves to be what I've always said they are: a bunch of white racists, white supremacists, white nationalists, Nazis. Period.
Yeah, yeah. And I do see that, Sheikh, that dismissiveness and that passive aggressive behavior, and just, when they're together, just smirking or laughing like, we're beneath them, right? And that's the whole problem that has even inspired me to like make these videos or write what I did and put the presentations out there, because they weren't going to cover any of that. And I hope that even with me, I've been able to make a difference in the Masonic world. And the honor and privilege is truly mine to know you and to walk this path beside you as my Sheikh and Murshid. And just the great work you have done for the Bayan, for humanity, for defending the East against a force which has basically done nothing but damage in the end. And now I'm glad that the younger generation that I'm seeing now, even here in America, they're able to see through all of it, right?
Yeah,
And that makes me happy. That gives
yeah.
me a satisfaction.
This is the thing that these people don't realize, that the more of this stuff that they kind of put out, whether about me or anybody else for that matter,
Yeah.
the more that they actually build the immunity of this upcoming generation against propaganda. 20 years ago, something like this would have been taken as gospel. Today, when you publish it, immediately people see through it, because these elites and their various puppets have lied so much to the public, the collective human public, over the last however long, that they themselves have been responsible more and more in inoculating a mass population against this kind of smear propaganda and what have you. And so, in a sense, Mr. Chris Bennett, in one way, is a manifestation of that great Persian proverb, Adu sabab khair shavat, which means the enemy shall become the cause or the instrumental cause for good. And in other words, the devil himself is actually God's puppet. So that's the way that we have to look at this. But, I reserve my rights. These people have crossed certain criminally legal thresholds, and they have to answer. It's simple as that.
Yeah, and you're right, because the younger generation, in terms of being able to see through all the propaganda, it's like in an instant. And I've been observing this trend, whether it's on Facebook, YouTube, or TikTok. Anytime I've seen something which was like anti-Islamic or anti-Persian, um, people immediately, and this is like the younger generation of all backgrounds, they immediately dismantle it. And I'm like, so happy about this, as they will be the leaders of tomorrow. And
Yeah,
inshallah, Allah is indeed the best of all planners, and the devil is indeed a dog on a leash, which is held by
yeah,
Allah. And he's
absolutely.
going to pull on that leash and
Yeah.
bring this devil back in check, which includes
Inshallah,
white supremacy.
that is what this looks like. So, Makaru wa makarullah, Allahu khairul makirin. They plot and God plots, and verily God is the greatest of all plotters. Um, and the fact that Bitter Winter's links went down, he even tells you the CESNUR, this multi-hydra cultic network organization itself, has panicked over the fact that this article by Bennett has come up, because the patterns that it established in creates legal exposure from another angle against that. So, this is the thing, these people blunder and we capitalize on their blunder and, basically set out the truth, and the truth exposes that. And that is what I do.
Yeah, definitely, Sheikh. And I think that's the thing. I mean, as time goes on, as we're headed into 2026, and this awakening continues to accelerate, especially with the way the condition that the world is in right now. I even saw something about I think it was some kind of a Zionist minister of some kind,
Mm.
and they were saying that they've regretted teaching the Holocaust in schools because they were in charge of all of the textbooks and all of that in between. So now they're saying that now those same kids that are now growing up, they're questioning the teachers and the curriculum and the system that, okay, you're teaching us about this to feel bad for these people. Okay, but why aren't you teaching us about the Havara Agreement and why those same people are doing what they're doing to the Palestinians now? Why is that not taught in our
Because
schools?
because if they teach that, then the entire myth of um, Israel's attempt to claim the Holocaust narrative as a weapon collapses. See, what Israel has done in the whole Holocaust narrative is that it has appropriated it. Like, this is a
Mhm.
subject that deserves its own discussion. Um, Up until the late 1950s, Israelis, the Sabra Israeli that had already settled there generations before, two or three, were either skeptical or hostile to a lot of Holocaust victims that were coming in to Israel at the time, right? Um, and then on top of that, when we go back into history, we see that some of the leading figures of Zionism under the British mandate before the creation of the state of Israel, people like Jabotinsky, were actually quite supportive of fascist Italy and even at one point, of Nazi Germany, right? They saw a mirror to their own ideology in what the Germans or the Italian fascists were doing. This is very controversial. Then there's the Havara Agreement, an agreement that the Zionist leadership of British Mandate Palestine made explicitly with Hitler and the Third Reich for the dispossession of German Jews and other European Jews under Nazi suzerainty, right? This is explosive because then what it does, it makes these, Palestine Mandate Zionist leaders themselves complicit in what came afterwards. And even more than that, when we get to what Anna Arendt wrote in her book, Eichmann in Jerusalem, that created this massive scandal when it was published, originally by the New York Review of Books. She very closely not only followed the trial, but was one of the only people that was allowed a personal interview with Adolf Eichmann. And her conclusion, which has now history has proven again and again, is that a section of the Jewish upper middle class actively collaborated with the Nazi in the extermination of their own Jewish people. So there are vectors of complicity, of collaboration of certain Jews in Europe, and then the Zionist leadership in Palestine with the Third Reich in the Holocaust. And this is the reason why Israel has latched onto this narrative, because on the day that it loses control over the Holocaust narrative is the day that its very reason for being, its very raison d'etre collapses. And this is good that this entire narrative is now being very clearly, meticulously questioned. Norman Finkelstein owes a lot of the credit for that. He even though specialists knew about this, and Hannah Arendt had already brought it up, but his book, The Holocaust Industry, exposed this sky high. And then his subsequent studies and interviews and the way that he has been treated, the way he was cast out of academia, the kind of attacks that they launched against him, etc. And nobody can call him an anti-Semite. He's Jewish. His parents were actually in the death camps.
Hmm.
you know.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And right now, including the what the Zionists are doing, and even with this Bennett guy from Canada, they're digging a hole for others, but they themselves are falling
They
for
will
it.
fall into it themselves. That's the German proverb. You know, he who she who digs off somebody else will fall into it themselves. And Mr. Bennett has now dug himself the very hole that he tried to dig for me. Because, you know, as I said, the Bob is a hill I'm willing to die on. Attack me all you want. You attack the
And you know,
Bob, that's something else.
you know what really kills me, Sheikh, is that they're thinking, how dare this Iranian fight back against the white
Exactly.
guy in
Yeah,
Bob Marley shirt?
this is the bottom. All these white hippies, all these white Anglo-American hippies, right, are supporting Mr. Bennett on his wall because they are white. It has nothing to do with what I'm saying or how I'm defending myself and refuting his arguments. They are pulling rank. This is about white supremacy, pure and simple. And what are these people? They're nothing but a bunch of white nationalist drug dealers. And they have now revealed themselves to be such through the screed and portal of Mr. Chris Bennett. This is not going to go away. This is something that these people, these stupid stoner people, need to understand. This is not going away. You either see the lie for what it is or you don't, and you pull rank behind Chris Bennett, then you go down with his ship as well.
And you know, one curiosity that I have is like, why is he so obsessed with you? Like, why did if you don't have
Because
any
because
influence?
I proved him to be number one, an intellectual lightweight, and number two, I proved him to be a propagandist. It's as simple as that. I proved him a fraud, an intellectual fraud on the subject of
Yeah,
the bayan. He doesn't know
yes.
what he's talking about. Instead of going to actual sources and spending a decent amount of time of studying them, even in the English. I mean, he doesn't know Arabic. And there's no way that you know even artificial intelligence right now is going to give him the correct nuance of various texts, right? He's intellectually lazy, and his own intellectual laziness, right, is tripping him up. Had he spent a decent amount of time not only reading my sources, but reading what going back to E.G. Brown. He's Canadian, so he should be able to read French. Go read A.L.M. Nicolas. You know, Nicolas' studies and translations of the Bayona are available. Nicolas was not pro Baha'i at all. In fact, Nicolas was a Bayani. He was sympathetic to the Babis.
Hmm.
Something the Baha'is have never been able to explain while using his work at the same time. Same with Brown, right? And there have been others. There's, you know, Sayyid Miqdad Nabavir Razavi, to his ultimate credit, over the last decade and a half, has put out study after study after study after study after study in Persian that eventually are going to be translated. But already a lot of Iranian studies scholars in the Western Ivory Tower have been citing it. So the narrative terrain is in fact changing.
Yeah.
Never mind that I have been cited in Peter Lamborn Wilson, a cultural icon, cited me in his two final books, not once, but multiple times, right? There's now an article in a E.J. Brill published volume by Milad Milani that contextualizes the Fatimiyya Sufi order. Although I disagree with his label of New Age in talking about the FSO, but nevertheless, that exists. So they can't cast me as an Islamist. They can't cast me as some kind of a, you know, extremist as this guy is that. The academic record has established it. And not in one piece, but multiple. Right? And then there's my own work that speaks for itself.
That's absolutely right, Sheikh. And I think people need to have their own self-discernment, study, and just have the eyes to be able to see through all of this. And
100%.
you know, which goes to my question is, for some of our white friends and allies and brothers and sisters we have out there, what do you advise them in terms of not falling victim to these racist white gurus and shamans and these new age people that are claiming to like have and know all this knowledge while they're even leading their own people astray?
Have your have your skepticism caps full on all the time. Never take a hand-me-down for granted. Never take anybody's word for granted. Don't pull rank behind a figure because it's in your racial or your class interest to do so. Do your own research, independent of it. Don't be influenced by anybody. If you don't understand something, then admit it. Don't just rely on the BS of other people. I said this to people for years regarding Wikipedia, because Wikipedia is so full of rubbish. And thankfully, that's now changing. Wikipedia's reputation is dirt. And we've talked about this before. So don't pull rank. Don't be an ethical coward, right? Do your own work. Read widely. Think deeply. And try to understand when there is a lie and a deception and a smear going on versus what the truth of the matter is.
Yes, Sheikh, definitely. And I think ethics is very important, and we really need that in today's world, and especially with the way things are going. And yeah, you're right. And I'm truly honored to be able to just take all of this wisdom and light that you have brought to me and so many people who love you and cherish you. And please, anything that I fail to ask you, please take your time.
That's about it for now. Like I said, there are official processes in place. I am going to allow these to play out, but I can guarantee that if and when they do play out, they're not going to benefit these people.
Yeah.
And there are things that are going to come out that are going to embarrass these people very, very spectacularly. But where this psychedelic cannabis subculture is concerned, I am absolutely categorically through with these people. I'm finished with all of them. It is a corrupt subculture. It is fundamentally motivated by Western colonialism, and its white middle class, main fundamental white middle class pedigree is a serious problem. And so these forces are not the forces of liberation. They are, Pied Pipers. They are the very problem that I have been encountering my entire life. So I am not associating with these people anymore. The Fatimiyya Sufi order officially, unequivocally, by my proclamation, is severing itself from that subculture completely from here on out. We don't want anything to do
Understood.
with these people at all. We don't want anything to do with their plants. We don't want anything to do with their perspectives. We don't want anything, any connection, no podcast, nothing. I don't want to have anything to do with these corrupt, white colonial motherfuckers anymore.
Understood, Sheikh. And yeah, until we come back again in the future for part 34, this has truly been powerful. And I thank you for your time, wisdom, light, and love. And I will put the links in the descriptions below for all the links in reference to this specific podcast. And just much love to the Sheikh for this time, honor, and privilege that he always gives us.
And thank you, and thank everybody who listens. Listen to the voice of truth from
Yeah.
wherever it comes from. Do not be a prey to the caprice or the capriciousness of the dark one. Use your mind. That is the portal of illumination and clarity, right? Don't absolve and abandon your head, your reason to other people, ever, anyone, right? That reason, that conscience is God within you, right? Don't abandon it to the forces of the opposite, of the antagonist. This is what I'm telling people. You can take this metaphor however you want. You want to psychologize it? Fine. You want to read it from a metaphysical perspective? Fine. However you want to read it. But pay attention to things. Use your own head. Use your own clarity. Use your own independence, and don't give it up. Don't abandon it for anybody.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. And this reminds me of the Nur Fatimiyya Sufi commandment number 3 of just listening to that inner voice
Yeah.
within. So
Yeah.
thank you, Sheikh, for
And
that.
also speak the truth, even if it be the acme of blasphemous heresy. And this
Yeah.
is what I do. These people want to cast me as controversial. I don't care. That is the principle I live by. I will speak the truth, even if it be the acme of blasphemous heresy. Because the truth is the truth. The truth is God itself.
Yes. Yeah, that's absolutely right. And just thank you for your time and your privilege and the honor and love and wisdom you always give us. And until part 34, Nur alaikum.
Alaikum Nur.